If I tell you the answer is 27, am I right? Well, what's the question? What's the problem I'm solving? If you don't know the problem, how do you know if the answer is right or wrong? You first have to define a problem before you can solve it. We have to start out with what happened. You collect data, and the data always tells you what happened. And from that, you determine how it happened. For example, look at these beams falling with dust trailing behind them, opaque dust. Let's say you're going to impersonate one of those beams. So you cover yourself with dust and jump off the top of the building. From the ground up, would someone see that dust trailing off of you? No. You need more dust. Okay, let's say you get a couple of armloads of flour and eject it out as you're falling. Can you impersonate this? No, that's opaque dust. It initially blocked out all of the sunlight, 100% of the sunlight, so it was pitch black. It's very dense dust. And you come to the realization that these pieces of material are becoming dust. They're frothing up into dust as they fall. And they didn't hit the ground. But if you didn't know that these turn to dust, and you start out with an assumption, you wouldn't get to the right answer, because do you know of anything that could turn a building to dust in midair? Something turned it to dust in midair. So it's important to first determine what happened, then how it happened, and only then who did it or why they did it. But again, we're just going to focus on what happened. The towers didn't slam to the ground. If they had slammed to the ground, there would be over 1 million tons of debris left stacked up in the ground. That didn't happen. Manhattan would have been flooded. Well, as we'll see, the towers were built in the Hudson River with a dike around them. If you slam 1 million tons of debris down onto the dike, you're going to break it. Didn't happen. And if you slammed 1 million tons of debris to the ground, it's going to make a thud. The seismic signals did not reflect that. Lack of debris. Again, if over 1 million tons of debris slammed the ground, you'd see a pile of debris left over. That's looking out that window. Air-conditioned office, looking across the street, and whoops, where did the building go? This is right after 9/11. Tower 2 is basically missing. Tower 1 is missing over there. I think everyone would have to agree there's not enough stuff left piled up on the ground. So this is what was there beforehand, and it just basically all went away. So here we are down on the ground. There's Tower 1, the north and south walls. Ambulance that was parked in front of the front door of Tower 1. It doesn't look clobbered by anything. This picture, I believe, was taken on 9/11, later in the day. I don't see any big steel beams on the ground. There's aluminum cladding. The towers were built with steel columns on the outside that were covered with aluminum cladding. And you see the aluminum cladding. The ambulance looks pretty good.
Judd and several other people keep asking us, when you look at where the towers used to stand, there is surprisingly so little rubble. Where did all the rubble go?
It's a very good question, Peter, and I have asked some people who've been doing some of the rescue and recovery work this morning. If you look behind me, you can see the very remains, the skeletal remains of the World Trade Center. And one volunteer, Robert Gerlinski, explained to me the reason there's so little rubble is that all of it simply fell down into the ground and was pulverized, evaporated.
There's a cluster of core columns that remains here. Watch what happens to them. They just faint. And, my detractors like to say, oh, it fell over. And because the dust was so fine, it hung in the air. Well, if the dust is so fine it hung in the air, how could it be settled instantly on these vertical columns? We saw how it was peeled away like a banana. But it comes a point where it's no longer a crisp boundary and just turns to dust. Call it dustification.